this next section, it's called Human Nature and Human Purposes. And she says that she's been emphasizing that an important commitment of natural law ethics is that the very content of ethics, how God created us to live, is intricately connected to the sort of creatures that we are. So that's the basic claim, right? How we're made determines what is ethical. That's really what she's saying. The content of ethics is based on who we are, how we've been created. And so she says that natural law theorists often make this point by saying that ethics is grounded in something that they call human nature. Now, as believers, when we think of human nature, we go directly to the sin nature, right? And so she wants to avoid that, right? She says the phrase human nature is today used in many different ways, and it is important to get clear on what natural law theorists mean by human nature. When they say that ethics is rightly grounded in human nature, so what do they mean? She says the short answer is that by human nature, natural law ethicists and theorists roughly mean the perfect definition of a human being. So it's not, the sin nature that we generally, default to when we're talking about nature. She's talking about the perfect definition of a human being as what human nature is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. This week, I've actually been talking a lot to different people from the young to my age about the need for proper understanding of what physicality is. And so, we tend to think of the sin nature or that somehow thinking only the spiritual things are the things that are of the highest benefit. But like what we read in the virtue ethics one for understanding both the teleos, it's not just the teleos, but also the origin, the origin of man was made physical, and physicality is important. You're not just a spirit that has this puppet suit on. No, you are a body who has a spirit, and we know it's important because Jesus didn't come as this mystical ghost that only appeared to have a body. No, he came in bodily form and grew and had understanding. Yes, he was. The hypostatic union is the great mystery there. But the physicality of life seems to be important, and we know that because in Genesis 1:1 it tells us that God created. So obviously, creation does have an important, good perspective in for God's glory and all that. So we can't just wave it away and say, well, the human nature is just only sin, and if we get outside of that, then we're living the right way, and we call that Gnosticism, and bad things happen as a result.
Yeah, and it's both and, right? We're a body that has a spirit, but we're also a spirit that has a body. Yeah. So both and kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, it is worth pointing out that human nature and sin nature are not equivalent to one another. That a person can be fully human and have a complete human nature without following or even having a sin nature. Of course, where do we get that from? Well, Jesus. Jesus is that exact representation for us. Indeed, this is true of the first Adam and up until his fall, and of course, the second Adam ultimately perfected and done what he's supposed to do in Jesus all throughout his life. The first humans were fully human all the way up until the time that they sinned, and the sinless Jesus was and is fully human his entire life on earth and afterward. Thus, a sinful nature and selfishness are not part of the perfect definition of a human being. To err is human, but to get past that is divine. And it's like, no, the error part is the error of the human part, and so we need to understand that. So the sinful nature and selfishness are not part of the perfect definition of the human being, and sinfulness and selfishness are not required for full-fledged humanity. And again, when we talk about economics or politics, this tends to pop up. If all men were angels, then communism would be possible, or just the opposite would happen. If you put all saints on an island, at some point you're going to find the scoundrel amongst them. Those a fun thought perspectives that we have.
Oh, I thought if you did that, they'd all starve unless they learned how to fish or something.
That's right. Only if they read Robinson Crusoe, because
Okay.
in all the economic books, it all comes back to Robinson Crusoe. So it's just your primary goal is to read Robinson Crusoe, and then you can understand economics. Well, what is rather the case is that our selfish tendencies are so pervasive and so powerful that we forget that the sin nature we have inherited is actually a perversion of human nature rather than divinely created human nature itself. So it's not that it's not important, but we give it too much sway over our understanding. But at the same time, we can't ignore it because it is still there.
Right. So what she's trying to do now is trying to separate, our sin nature from what she calls human nature, because she's going to use human nature, in fact, she already has,
Right.
as the basis of the content of ethics. Right. So that's what so she has to separate this here. And so she says what follows then is that she'll be using the term human nature to refer not to sin nature, real though it is, but to something even more fundamental that all human beings share. And so when the second person of the Trinity, right, the Son, Jesus Christ, became incarnate, he took on human nature and lived in a way that showed us the perfect fulfillment of human nature. So that's the idea here. And so she is using the term human nature. That is something that's common to all humans, including Christ, but it's something that only Christ has perfectly honored and lived out. Right. So Christ is a standard with regard to how we can really live in terms of what our human nature is all about. And of course, human nature is her basis for ethics. Right. That's the basis for the content of ethics.
Right. So, okay, with all that vocabulary in mind, she's going to restate the two claims about natural law that she's made in the beginning of the chapter. First one is the possibility of ethics is rooted in human nature, specifically the fact that we are created capable of cooperation, discernment, rationality, will, and so forth. And the second, the very content of ethics is rooted in the human nature. So the first statement of the possibility of ethics is rooted in human nature is a familiar one and amounts to the claim that certain facts about the way humans were created explain why morality makes sense for us, but not for, at least for most, other animals. So again, you have to differentiate the nature from the nature. Whose nature are you talking about? And of course, us being made in God's image, we're going to be a different type of creature, a different type of animal, a different type of 6-day creation than the other animals that are walking about.
Right. And so she asks the question, why should facts about human nature, including the imago Dei, one fundamental element of our human nature, and then our particular physical makeup, another element of our human nature, and our social and emotional forms of life, yet another element of our human nature. Why should these things have implications for how we ought to live? Well, she says, according to natural law theorists, the fact about what we are and value claims about how we should behave are more tightly connected than they may at first appear. And one way of drawing this connection that we have seen, she says, what humans are determines what they need to flourish. So what we are, the type of creature we are, determines what we need to flourish, and needs have value implications. So there's her kind of way of getting us to morality, right? The kind of creatures that we are determine what we need. And of course, needs have implications with regard to value.
Right.
And there we are. She gets us to ethics.
Yeah, and impressively, I have to say, I enjoyed this part. And this isn't just water, food, air, shelter. This is things like love and respect, and how about even worship? I mean, that's something is you stick a bunch of people in behind, let's say, an iron curtain of some kind. I don't know why an iron curtain would exist, but let's just call it an iron curtain, for example. And all of a sudden, you have perfect atheism, and no one worships anything, except people do seem to be worshiping things, and it just instead of a god or God, it seems to be the state or man or different aspects of this amalgamation of a working worker who we should all love and respect. So that those things tend to be then a need, and so when we say, well, let's remove different perspectives and see if we still have those things. The fact that astronaut training still has aspects where it's like, okay, if we're going to go to Mars, we need to put some guy in an isolation chamber for a year and test their mental fortitude. Well, but if we're just these creatures, and you have your books and your music, why do you need human interactions of some kind? It seems like, well, you're just there, but it seems to be a part of our need within our human nature, and it's not just a need for survival alone, but that flourishing aspect is there.